meeting, or as we like to call referendum. I ask that you all please rise to salute the flag.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Davidson?
Here.
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 Thank you, Mrs. Davidson. Moving on to letter E, a report from Student Council Representative Emma Karpinski.
Thank you. At John Trumbull, Judy White received Teacher of the Year. The school celebrated with a parade in the halls and a reception afterwards. The culminating preschool collaboration for the 2014-2015 school year took place with over 40 people in attendance. They discussed their work from the past school year. At Judson, the PTO sponsored a Mother's Day sale for students to purchase gifts for their mothers. For Teacher Appreciation Week, Mrs. Scully hosted a breakfast for the staff, and the PTO held a barbecue. At Polk School, the PTO treated the staff to a catered luncheon for Teacher Appreciation Week. There were flowers and coffee along with a breakfast. Last Saturday, students from science classes went on a field trip to release the trout that they've been raising for an ongoing project. At Swift, the Leo Club hosted a game of bingo for senior citizens, and on Saturday, 10 Swift artists participated in the Quasi Chalk Art Competition. Artists from the art club also have been working on painting trash bins for the park and revealed them at the chalk art event. At the high school, juniors signed a prom promise after attending a mock crash on May 1st. The administration also went classroom to classroom serving staff coffee and pastries for Teacher Appreciation Week. The senior prom for senior citizens took place April 30th in the cafeteria. The school climate committee organized it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Karpinski. All board members should have received the minutes of the Board of Education meeting from April 27th, 2015 in their Friday packet. Does anybody have any questions, edits, or suggestions? Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board accept the minutes of the Board of Education meeting from April 27th, 2015 as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Nardella. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Moving on to letter F, our favorite part of the evening is award recognitions. Tonight, the Board of Education would like to welcome all of the Polk students for their certificates because we want to wish them a wonderful congratulations. We are extremely proud of all of the hard work they are doing. We have Golden Bucket winners here that have received this award for their excellent citizenship. These students exhibit the kindness that makes Polk School such a special place. We are all very proud of you. What we're going to do is Dr. Catamola will call your name, and when you hear your name called, you come right up, shake Dr. Catamola's hand, and then I will give you a certificate and congratulate you. And then you can go right back to your seat. After we do some of the award recognitions, we'll take a brief pause, and we'll ask the Polk students to come up by grade so they can take their picture with Dr. Catamola for the newspaper. Okay?
Okay. So for grade 3, we start tonight with Michaela Duva. Also, Caitlin Lafieri. Joshua Monette. Skylar Palmer. And Gianna Rodriguez. our fourth graders from March. Ashley Delia. Stephen LaRusso. Lana Roger Sovia. Emma Newguy. And Lola Peluso. For March in grade 5, we have Elizabeth Matozo. Naya Dennis. Emma Geis. Isabella Bogustova. Jonathan Guo. Ipek Asmananoska. For April in grade 3, we have Kevin Comerford. Drew McGarrity. Emerson Plowman. Vincent Lee. And Giselle Baranowski. In grade 4, Colin Hurley. Mattingly Creeder. Joshua Malillo. Zachary Generu. And Ari Spaho. In grade 5, Ethan Knight. Congratulations, Ethan. Catherine Noga. Ava Finateri. Zinette Kika. Alyssa Demarest. And Ian Cronin.
For the month of March and April, we have 6 Polk Elementary School students who are recognized for outstanding dedication in the disciplines of art, music, and physical education. The students are as follows.
Liliana Spagnoletti. Liliana was for art. Casey O'Toole. Casey is for music. For physical education, Sophia Gugliotti. And for April, in art, we have Araya Rose. Congratulations. In music, Karina DeRose. And for physical education in April, Casey O'Toole.
Moving on in our award recognition this evening, and again, we will be taking a brief break in just a few moments. I'd like to recognize the Watertown Award winners for their Scholar Athlete Program. First award recipient is senior Ty Mecca. Ty Mecca is a self-motivated and organized learner who genuinely enjoys his classes. He's focused, and his enthusiastic approach to academics has resulted in great success for Ty over the years. His ability to balance the rigors of his academic course load and the responsibilities of his extracurricular activities is a testament to Ty's determination and his maturity. He is a tremendous student athlete. The dedication required to balancing schoolwork and practice is normally the most difficult part of interscholastic athletics. As a student, he is number one in his class. As an athlete, Ty has created an atmosphere among his team and his school where his teammates not only look up to him, but respect him. Ty Mecca has played football, basketball, and baseball, prior to just focusing his attention on baseball the past couple of seasons. On the field, Ty is a fierce competitor. He is focused, determined, and always gives it his all. It is his resilience that coaches have deemed Ty's one of best qualities. It takes composure, confidence, and most of all, respect to become successful in your high school athletic career. As a captain and a leader with no reservation, Ty has showcased all three during his time at Watertown High School. And we congratulate Ty on winning the Scholar Athlete Award for 2015.
A testament to the athlete that Ty is. He's unable to be here tonight to receive this award because they are at a very important baseball game defending Watertown's title this evening. So congratulations. I hope they win. I haven't heard yet, but we'll see that Ty gets this. We'll come to the school. And thank you again.
Absolutely. The second Scholar Athlete Award goes to Mary Sharkowitz. I'm going to read a little bit about Mary before I ask her to come up. Mary is a very strong academic student. She's a hard worker and is determined to do well academically. In addition to taking 5 advanced placement classes this year, Mary is working with a teacher in her free time on AP World History material. She has achieved honors status all 4 years of high school and has been very successful in the honors cohort program, putting her at the top of her class. Mary's future plans include pursuing a degree in political science or international relations, and then pursuing a graduate degree in law. She has embodied the virtues of good habits in every aspect of her life that have piloted her to top performances in high school athletics. She possesses drive, discipline, and the innate habituation for excellence in everything that she tackles. Even through adversity, Mary has embodied success as she has turned obstacles in her athletic career to successes as her platform of a student athlete. Mary is a natural leader and a natural competitor on every team she is on. She is encouraging to her teammates and always pushes them to reach their fullest potential, whether it's helping them at practice or cheering them on at the meets. She is a 3-sport captain. She served as captain in her senior year of cross country, junior and senior year for indoor track, and is currently the captain of Watertown's outdoor track and field team. Both coaches and fellow teammates have nothing but positive experiences and comments to say about Mary Sharkowitz. Congratulations. We're going to take a brief pause so that the Polk school students can have their picture taken with Dr. Cardamola. So if the third grade Polk students would come right up here to the front, and parents, please don't be shy, come right up to the front row with your cameras if you'd like.
drink, but
You really do want to drink. No, you can tell the truth.
She must have got stuck out there with her parents. Not stuck, but engaged. She was very engaged.
A lot of custodians came in.
wait, did they leave? Oh, my glasses on. Hold on.
It's amazing how much room there is.
And cheers to the,
Wow. Silence.
Okay, so you're just going to read the names?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you for observing that break so that the children could get their pictures taken for their very special awards. Moving on to letter C. On May 6th, Governor Malloy declared May 6th as School Nurses Day. The Board of Education would like to thank the school nurses for all of their outstanding efforts and dedicated services to the students and staff in Watertown Public Schools and in Watertown Parochial Schools. The board wishes to congratulate and recognize the following school nurses.
and I'm just going to read everyone's names because unfortunately, it's just the way that it worked that none of them could be here tonight. It wasn't that none of them, I heard from all of them personally the reasons why, but I still wanted to recognize them and not let their week go by. So our Polk school nurse is Carol Crean. Our Watertown High School nurse, Linda Burmeister. Our Judson Elementary School nurse, Diane Andrew. Our John Trumbull Primary School nurse, Lynn Kelly. Another John Trumbull Primary School nurse, Dorothy Stransky. Our Swift Middle School nurse, Ann Terzigny. Nurse at St. Mary Magdalene, Susan Muchacharo. And the nurse at St. John the Evangelist, Mary Skalenka. Thank you very much. As I often say to our nurses, they run our school nurse offices almost like a mini emergency room every single day that school is open, and yet somehow manage to provide care for every student, and sometimes the adults that come through there like their family. So we very much appreciate each one of our school nurses and the amount of work they do and the quality with which they do it. Thank you.
We're very fortunate. Thank you, Dr. Cardamola. This past winter was really one for the record books. And we could not have held school and kept the grounds and the town safe on so many days if it weren't for the great efforts of our custodial and maintenance crew and the Department of Public Works and the town workers. Their tireless collaborative efforts were exemplary. And for the first time in history, on the Watertown Board of Ed Facebook page, we have received over 5,000 views and the largest number of likes and comments on a post that was dedicated to just those people. I usually don't keep my phone out in the meetings, but I thought for tonight's purposes, I would read a couple of those comments from our community. So not only does the Board of Ed recognize the work that they have done, but the community of parents and grandparents and school bus drivers and aunts and uncles who have to travel safely, who can't necessarily worry about daycare on days we might have had to have a snow day, so that they were able to work. And thanks to the fantastic wireless at the high school, it's not opening. Boy, let's see. You bear with me, it's that important to know how many people in our community really appreciate the work that was done in the wee hours of the night and in the morning. And I've stalled long enough, and it's not loading. But I can echo some of the comments.
Is it your
Oh, you do?
Facebook page?
Yep, the board's Facebook page. Have to check out what
gonna
service
say,
you
what
have. Yes.
AT&T.
This is from a resident. Great work and a few gutsy calls made for a safe winter. Good job, guys. They are fantastic. Great job. Thank you for all of your hard work and the endless hours put in to make sure our streets were safe to pass and our schools were safe. We have the best workers in Watertown and Oakville. Thank you to all of you. Keep up the great work, guys. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all of your hard work and your teamwork. Custodial maintenance and the DPW did an amazing job this horrible winter. Thank you for all you did. It is greatly appreciated. Our guys and gals really do rock. That's awesome. They did such a great job. Well done. We need more of that. Keep up the good work. Outstanding work. Hear, hear. Thank you. I'm glad someone stepped up for the working man. They truly deserve it. And then some. That's just a sampling of some of the comments that were left in your behalf. So the Watertown Board of Education would like to recognize and thank the district custodians, maintenance workers, and the Department of Public Works and town workers, as well as Ray Senecola, the facilities manager, for all of their hard work and dedication to the district. Dr. Katamola?
Again, we'll recognize everyone, even though everyone couldn't be here. And honestly, part of the reason everyone couldn't be here is because even though I tried to force some of them to come that were working, they knew they had their priorities straight and wanted to make sure the buildings were ready to open up tomorrow morning, because obviously some of them worked the night shift. And so I let them know I certainly would still acknowledge them, even though there was so much work to be done. They couldn't come out this evening. But we have to start with the person that woke up every time there was even a raindrop between November and March with me at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that is our facilities manager, Ramo Senecola. James Bellreeve from Watertown High School. From John Trumbull Primary School, Guilford Butote.
So much.
From our maintenance department, Bernard Bernie Bonfilio. From Swift Middle School, our custodian, Rodney Clark. From Watertown High School, custodian, Mike Cole. From Judson Elementary School, Don Sear. From John Trumbull Primary School, custodian, one of our newest, Mark Dean. From Swift Middle School, a custodian, Wayne Demarest. From John Trumbull Primary School, a custodian, Robert Demsk. From John Trumbull Primary School, a custodian, Eric Dippelhofer. From John Trumbull Primary School, a custodian, John Dobkins.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for everything. Appreciate it.
Also couldn't be here with us this evening, unless I need to put my glasses back on, Norm Elkins from Swift Middle School. From John Trumbull Primary School, custodian, Dominic Falcone. Could not be here with us tonight, Rebecca Fetting from Polk Elementary School. From maintenance, Jeff Hughes. Custodian from Swift Middle School, David Kennedy. Thank you, Dave. From Polk Elementary School, our head custodian, Craig Lamphere. From John Trumbull Primary School, our head custodian, Gary LeMay. From Watertown High School, I think he's here, but not in here right now, Mike McCara. From Swift, our custodian, Mario Mancini. From Judson Elementary School, custodian, Henry McCow. A custodian at both Polk and Judson, Roman, I always do this, Nelisnik. From our high school here, often here to help us with the board meetings, and here this evening, Dan Nelson. Thank you, Danny. Custodian in the district for 40 years. Couldn't be here with us this evening, Ron Nordby from the high school. Here with us tonight from our high school again, Kevin Palmer. Congratulations, Kevin. Also from Watertown High School, Richard Palmer. From the high school, John Panella. From Swift Middle School, Scott Petro. From Polk Elementary School, Salvatore Rinaldi. From Swift Middle School, Nasser Solomovsky. I think it's actually Nasir. Nasir. From Maintenance, couldn't be here with us this evening, Steve St. Mary. Also from Maintenance, Edward, as we refer to him, Ned Stack. From Judson, a custodian, Joseph Stetka. From Swift Middle School, Scott Sturgis. Another one of our maintenance folks could not be here with us tonight, Dave Tartaglia.
So I spoke about collaboration, and not only collaboration with our superintendent, Dr. Cadamola, and Ray Senecola, but collaboration with the Department of Public Works. And tonight, representing the union president on behalf of the Highway Department from the DPW, we'd like to present to the Department of Public Works a certificate of appreciation in thanks for all that you do, Mr. Tony Montagno. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to add on, take a moment to personally thank, while I have Mr. Montano here tonight, the Department of Public Works, because as I have said many times, and especially when I've seen any of you in person, whether it's in passing or in an official capacity, nearly every one of the calls that we had to make this winter was a difficult call. It might snow later, it's already snowing, it might rain, it might snow, it might ice. And the only way that we were able to make the calls that we did was with, number one, the information provided to us through the Department of Public Works. And number two, the amount of time and energy that every single person that works for the Department of Public Works put into the roads in Watertown. When they told me they would have the roads ready, I knew that was a given. And as a new superintendent especially, that became very critical every time I woke up at 4 a.m. to make this decision with Mr. Senecola. And as Mrs. Crotty mentioned, some of them might have been considered a little bit, I'll put quotes on it, gutsy calls, but 9 times out of 10, that was due to the information that the Department of Public Works gave me and the information that Mr. Senecola gave me. Because the flip side of that is we could have the roads ready, but we had to have the schools ready too. And we had to have collaboration between our school custodians and our maintainers who come and operate the plows inside of the school grounds also. So one of the things people as a whole don't realize is just how much goes into not only the decision to be made, but also the work that gets done behind the scenes for the sidewalks to be shoveled, for the roofs to be checked in the wintertime when there's snow on the roofs, and the amount of coordination that has to go on night before sometimes and the wee hours of the morning for these schools to be ready to open on time is phenomenal. And we couldn't do it without every one of you sitting in the room and also everyone that couldn't be here tonight in the entire Department of Public Works. So again, I just want to personally thank you for making my job that much easier this winter and also for ensuring that we had the fewest amount of days out possible. And if you look at the surrounding towns right now and when the last days of school are, you'll see what I mean, because we are done on June 19th, and there are many of the surrounding towns who are going until at least the 24th. And that's because of the work that all of you did, not what I did. Thank you.
Another point I'd like to make is that obviously we can't say enough about you, clearly. But another point I'd like to make is that some people would question why we would name everybody, knowing that they were working and knowing that they responded, that regretfully they couldn't come for other reasons. The same with the children that couldn't be here due to baseball practice or games or lacrosse. It's really important to the Board of Ed when we choose to recognize somebody, particularly tonight, that their name is read and it's on the record, because that's how we feel. And just putting it on an agenda, even if the person isn't here, doesn't quite do it for us. So that's why all the names were read, and that's why we will continue to do that, because when we honor somebody together with Dr. Cardamola and the board, we truly mean it. Very, very appreciative, so thank you very much. Okay, moving on in the agenda, I'll turn the table to Dr. Cardamola for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. As usual, thank you. Thank you
care.
all. Thank you. As usual, Emma did a great job, so I'm left without much to say, which is good. I had obviously two full-day school visits over the past 2 weeks since we were last together. I was at Swift this past week, and the week before I was at John Trumbull. I was also out at the schools quite a bit for other reasons, though, over the past couple of weeks, as I normally am, but there were some specific things that I was a part of that I'd just like to mention. One was a breakfast, a very nice breakfast that Mrs. Mecca and the entire faculty and staff put on for our paraprofessional of the year, Karen Sturgis. And I think the board will remember we recognized Karen here at a meeting back in the fall, but her colleagues recognized her at John Trumbull 2 weeks ago, and it was a great time for Karen. I'm happy that they were able to do that for her. Likewise, as Emma mentioned, and I just keep saying it really is the year of Judy White. And last week, I got to be a part of a fantastic morning at John Trumbull. They had a parade. This is a long-standing tradition at John Trumbull. When the Teacher of the Year comes from John Trumbull, all of the students come out into the hallways and parade through with the Teacher of the Year, who, whether man or woman in Watertown, one of the things that comes along with being the Teacher of the Year is a tiara. So of course she had her tiara on. They had brought her flowers. But the cutest thing, the best part of that was when they all came out into the hallway, Mrs. White's own class started the chant and every other kid picked it up. Mrs. White, Mrs. White. A bunch of little kindergarten, first, second graders chanting Mrs. White's name. Was really something to see at John Trumbull. So again, congratulations to Judy White. You'll probably be happy to give up that tiara by the time we're at the end of August. Also, last week, the Gold Circle Awards dinner was held. A number of board members attended with me, Ms. Crotty, Mr. Lambert, Mr. Nardella, Ms. Wilk, Mr. Orsini, Ms. Rosa, and Ms. Parlato, who couldn't be here with us this evening, but also attended with me. That was a fantastic night. I'm appreciative of the invitation from the Gold Circle and also of the fact that our late board chair, Mr. Guy Bazzano, was given the memorial award on the Phil Berchonic Memorial Award, and his wife, Guy's wife, was there to accept that award on his behalf, and it was a very nice evening, in addition to the fact that so many of our students were recognized as fantastic, again, scholar athletes. Every single student in that room is both a top-notch academic performer in our schools and an athlete, and it's such a nice night to recognize those students. So I'd like to just officially thank the Gold Circle for once again doing that and for the scholarships that they bestow upon our students. Also this evening, and as I mentioned, Ms. Parlato is not with us. She would not be. I am going to take the board through the presentation on our teacher evaluation plan. As you know, we had a subcommittee meeting of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee before the Board of Education meeting this evening. So all of those members had a chance to discuss this in advance, but now we'll present the entirety for the full board. And also, and we did this at the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting also, if there's no objection from the board, with board permission, Ms. Parlato, the perpetual worker who I insisted did not come tonight because she was unable to, her daughter is ill, quite ill, asked that I call her so that she could hear what the questions were, at least during the full board meeting, if there were any questions, because as you know, she runs the teacher evaluation committee on my behalf, and so she wanted to ensure that if she needed to go back to the committee, she heard firsthand. So as long as, yeah, this would be helpful, right? As long as there's no objection from the board, I will call and just have Janet on speaker. More than likely, I think we've answered the majority of those questions in the subcommittee, but.
All board members okay with that? Thank you. Hi. Technology would be better if we were able to Skype you, I suppose, but I'm just about to start, so I'll put it down and you'll be able to hear again. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. And we're not, my clicker, hold on a second. Let's reset here. There we go. There we go. So, as most of you are aware, there was a public act passed in May of 2012 that required the Connecticut State Board of Education to adopt an Educator evaluation and support program, the acronym for that being SEED across the state. Our local school districts, such as Watertown, create Educator evaluation plans using the guidelines that were set forth by the state, and then they are brought to local boards of education for approval, and finally we submit them to the State Department of Education for approval. The rationale behind this decision in public law and our decisions and rationale as we move forward and put together a plan is the fact that no school level factor matters more to student success than high quality teachers and effective leaders. This is the real reason for the teacher and the administrator evaluation plan that we have put together and that we bring to you this evening. Our plan addresses the need to, one, clearly define excellent practice, to give accurate, useful information about educators' strengths and development areas, and finally, to provide opportunities for professional learning, growth, and recognition. As I mentioned, there is a statutory requirement that every school district must have a plan, and the plan must be put together by a committee. Our Professional Growth and Evaluation Committee is very well represented from our teacher and administrator ranks with 18 members from across the schools. This includes people from just about every department and administrators from the schools. Throughout the year, there have been meetings of the Professional Growth and Evaluation Committee to review and revise the plan. A lot of work has been put into this by the teachers and the administrators of the district, and Ms. Parlato, I'd like to take a moment and recognize how many meetings were attended, because for the past 6 months it has been at least monthly, and there are a number of smaller group meetings that happen even outside of the committee meeting. And it is all done after school. It is all voluntary for the teachers and the administrators to be on this committee. And I'd like to thank all of them while I have the floor here tonight for the amount of time and work and thought that was put into this plan. There have also been discussions with the teachers and the administrators' bargaining units. Part of that has happened as a part of the committee process. The rest of that has happened via my monthly meetings with the Watertown Education Association and my conversations with Ms. Lurs as the president of the Administrators Union, and also Ms. Parlato running pieces of the plan as we went through it past the union for feedback along the way.
So here at this point, we are at the Board of Education presentation this evening, and an action item that's in front of you. With approval this evening, the plan would be submitted to the State Department of Education. The state will review the plan. They will suggest revisions from the various forces and committees at the state that look through these plans, and they do go through these plans. And they will send those back to us if any revisions are required. We would bring back any information to the Board of Education. And once we have final approval, we would distribute the plan to all of the administrators and the teachers. And again, as we have done in the past 2 years, work in some professional development related to the aspects of the plan to ensure that everyone has a clear understanding of the plan, because it is a little bit different than the prior year plan. This shows you how the teacher ratings are compiled, what percentages each of the categories entail, and I'll explain the categories a little bit more as we move forward, but the largest percentage in this plan is the observation of teacher practice and performance. That is 50%. 40% is based on student growth and development, and then 5% each on what is called the whole school learning indicator and parent engagement. And again, I'll explain a little bit more about how those are determined. The administrator rating is exactly the same, the way that the percentages break out. It is 5% flip side teacher effectiveness outcomes, in other words, the school learning indicator, parent feedback, and then 40% on student growth and development and observation of leadership and performance of practice. In category 1, what makes up the teacher performance and practice is classroom observation and reviews of practice. And I'll explain a little bit more about what a review of practice entails. So, and to measure the performance, we use, as we mentioned earlier, the Common Core of Teaching rubric for all teachers and the Common Core of Service Delivery rubric for non-teachers. So, for example, speech and language pathologists are service professionals, school psychologists, school social workers, school counselors. All of those people are assessed with a different rubric because the nature of their practice is a bit different than a classroom teacher. The types of observations that will be conducted, there are formal in-class observations. That is when an evaluator, an administrator would observe a teacher's classroom practice for at least 30 minutes. A review of practice, this is a little bit different this year the way we are doing it. The teacher and the administrator review a portfolio of the teacher's work twice per year, including lesson plans, student work, assignments, assessments, and a teacher's written reflection on all of the pieces that are presented. Again, that's twice a year, at about the midway point of the year and at the end of the year. And also there are informal observations, which is an observation of classroom practice or a meeting. Certain meetings would qualify for that also. Professional learning committee meetings, for example, PLCs, planning and placement teams, PPT meetings are possible for informal observations also. And those would last at least 15 minutes. We break out the number of observations required between first or second year teachers, in other words, novice teachers, and beyond the second year. In argument's sake, and this point came up at the subcommittee meeting, to some degree you are still a novice teacher, even in year 3 and in year 4, but the way the state defines a novice teacher is year 1 and year 2, and there is a plethora of research behind the fact that what happens in year 1 and year 2 are the most important developmentally for a new teacher. So for teachers in their first or second year of their careers, that's their careers, it's not necessarily in Watertown. We'll clarify that too. If you taught somewhere else for 6 years and then came to Watertown, you would not be a first or second year teacher in your career. You would be on the other spectrum. So for these people, first or second year, for formal in-class observations, there are at least 3, and at least 2 of them will include a pre-conference and a post-conference. In other words, one can have just a post-conference and no pre-conference. And to be clear about what that means, in a pre-conference, an administrator meets with a teacher or service professional and talks about what they will see. So if an administrator was visiting a classroom in a pre-observation, they might review a lesson plan, talk about what the goals of the lesson are, how they might assess student progress, and so on. They'll have a frame of reference for when they actually observe the class. And at a post-conference, it's the opposite. They talk about how the lesson went. The administrator may ask questions based upon what he or she saw and review student work. And the teacher will reflect upon how the lesson went. Reviews of practice, again, as I mentioned, those are 2 at the mid-year point and at the end of the year. This is the review of the portfolio that the teachers will be putting together. Teachers beyond the first or second year of their career, it is at least 1 formal observation, and that would include both a pre and a post conference. 2 reviews of practice, that is the same at the mid-year point and at the end of the year. And at least 1 informal observation with feedback provided by the evaluator. In the 5% category, that was the parent engagement piece that you saw. That is done by the teacher and the evaluator identifying 1 parent engagement goal. And that's determined by the survey that we administer every year and seek parent feedback about the school that their student is in. And so, for example, you'll see the entirety of the survey at some point, and I know as parents, many of you have already seen it in the past. Questions are asked such as, do you feel your student is challenged in school? Do you feel that the school is a safe environment? They are questions mostly about the school's climate and about how the school is meeting the academic needs of the students. And so teachers and evaluators will go through those survey results for their school, and that's how they create these goals and action steps. 40% of the teachers' end rating is on student growth and development. These are, our acronym for them are SLOs, the Student Learning Objective, which is to be based upon one of the district and school learning goals. And as I mentioned earlier in the subcommittee meeting, as we move forward into the 15-16 year, this will be a lot easier for us as a district and as individual schools because we are moving forward with district goals in place and corresponding school-wide goals that we will retune over the summer via retreats with the administrators and then also again with the Board of Education. But we have a starting point this year instead of trying to fill in and work backwards to some degree as we were. The way teachers measure progress on this learning objective is using assessments that are created or decided upon at the school level. And the reason for that is because at this point, those are the types of assessments that we have in the district to use. I have to make sure I say this. For 2015-16, the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which is the state standardized test, will not impact teachers' rating score. So notice I said that the progress that they're measuring is based upon school-level assessments, mostly teacher-created assessments. These are not based on standardized test scores at this point. 5% of the teacher summative rating is on the whole school learning indicator. Now this is a place where we are doing something different than we have done in the past, and this is a place where, as a district, we right now still have control over how to measure this. Again, because we are not being impacted by the Smarter Balanced Assessment at this point. And by impacted, I mean it's not being directly connected yet to the district performance, just like it's not being connected to individual teacher performance. So the committee worked to try to find a fair way to determine how a individual teacher's rating could be based on 5% of the whole school's performance. And what would that actually mean? What could we use to measure that? And I gave an example in the subcommittee meeting. I'll give a similar example. If a whole school learning indicator, let's say there was a goal to improve in math, and they were focused in, say it's the high school and they're focused in on 10th grade math, and they're using assessments in the building to measure that. How those students grow in that 10th grade math, and there's a problem already in what I'm saying because there are many versions of what 10th grade math is. So you would have to narrow that down to, are we talking about the entire 10th grade? Are we talking about Algebra 2? Are we talking about the students who are in Algebra 1? Are we talking about the students that happen to take geometry? So whatever narrow focus that had, that would be how the whole school learning indicator was then calculated. That's one way of doing it. And the problem with that, I feel, and this committee feels, is that you are basing the rating, 5% of every teacher that works in that building, their rating would be based on whether or not those students improved in that particular goal. And so it would be a particular group of students and a particular group of teachers teaching those students that would then impact everyone's rating. Vice versa, the plan that we have come up with for this year is to average out the student learning score of each teacher. So every teacher in a building has to have a student learning objective goal, where they are measuring the performance of the students in their own classroom against a standard. They will all have a rating for that. So if you take that rating for every person that works in a building, add it up and divide it by how many people that work there, that is how we are going to get the whole school learning indicator. And that way, it is shared responsibility. Every person that works in the building knows that the progress that they are working toward making with the individual students in their classroom is not only affecting them, it's affecting the entire school. And this committee was on board with doing this because it reflects the importance of it being, again, a shared responsibility, and that amongst the entire school, they can all know that they have impacted their whole school learning indicator instead of it being based on a certain number of teachers. Again, this is just to recap so that you can see the percentages on one page at the end of the year, and this is again in compliance with state statute. One final rating score is given, and it is based upon those 4 indicators. 50% for performance and practice, again, that's the observations and the reviews of practice. 40% on student growth and development, that is the student learning objectives that each teacher has. 5% on that parent engagement goal, and 5% that average of the whole school learning indicator that adds up to the 100% that gives the final rating. These are the categories. 1 being below standard, which means they are not meeting the indicators of performance according to the rubrics that we use. 2, they are approaching expectations. They're meeting some of the indicators of performance, but not others. 3, they're meeting expectations of performance, which means obviously they're meeting those indicators. And 4, they are substantially exceeding the indicators of performance. And those numbers correspond to the numbers on the rubrics that are used to measure performance that were in the packet that I sent. Those are state standardized rubrics that the administrators are all trained in. And along the same lines, I will mention, I know the board is familiar with this, but to bring it full circle, this is the calibration that we have been doing amongst the administrators for the entirety of this year that will continue. When we are talking about calibrating how teachers are rated, we are talking about utilizing those rubrics that you have in the packet and calibrating individual administrators from different buildings and different grade levels, so that if what I see as an administrator is a 3 in a particular category, we can be fairly certain that this other administrator would see the same sort of performance as a 3. And in that way, we're providing consistency and fairness to the teachers who are being evaluated. And it improves our practice as administrators also. And that is the entire administrative team from the schools and the cabinet, for the most part. Obviously not Mr. Senecola or Mrs. Brown at this point, but the rest of us going through that calibration. So as I mentioned, our hope is that we will be able to move the plan forward to the state. Our hope also, obviously, is when it gets to the state that it is approved without any changes or very few. It typically comes back in the summer. That it doesn't come back right away, so we would have to convene again with the committee, and then I would bring any changes back to the board for information. It has to be approved by the board once by statute before it moves forward, but obviously if there were changes made to the plan, I would bring them back for information to the board. Can I answer any questions, Mr. Lambert?
Yes, on the local school district education evaluation plan, once we get that plan and once we approve it tonight, how long, what is the time frame for which the state department signs off on that? I know it's back and forth, but do we have some kind of a timeline?
We will turn it in by the 15th if it is approved tonight. If it were not to be approved tonight, we would send a letter in and ask for additional time to turn the plan in. And typically, there have been a lot of changes at the State Department with the commissioner change and
That's
some.
what bothers me.
Just a few.
And so, but what we're still hopeful for is that by the end of June, we at least have some thing back. And that's what we have seen. We started last year with the approval of the plan. And I refresh my memory, Ms. Parletto. I think it did come in the middle of July. Am I right, the approval?
That's right. They estimate about 4 weeks for approval from the state.
Right. They estimate about 4 weeks for approval. However, last year I believe it came in the middle of July.
Thank you.
Board members have questions for Dr. Cardamola?
If I were a teacher and I had gotten a 2 or a 1, I think I would be in a state of shock. But I would imagine that even some teachers getting a 3 would be a little disappointed. I was just wondering if there's a procedure in place for addressing a teacher protesting a rating, because it seems awfully cut and dry, being assigned a number, after all of these evaluation techniques were used and having to live with that. Is there some way to adjust that if the teacher feels that he or she's been unjustly treated by the system?
Well, I'll answer your question in 2 ways, because hopefully we don't ever get to the point where a teacher wants to take it all the way and contest it. So I'll answer how that works, though, because I think that's part of what you're asking. But leading up to that, one of the things that we are working on continually as administrators via this professional development is looking for what we call levers for change. In other words, when we do see that someone's practice is a 2 in a particular portion of the rubric, for example, teachers don't want to be classified as approaching expectations, and we don't want our teachers classified as approaching expectations. So our rationale is, how do we work with an individual to move them forward? What is the key to moving them forward? What part are they not excelling at that we can, again, go back directly to the rubric and talk about what it means to get a 4 in this category and why you are performing at a 2. Let's talk about how we can help you to move forward. So there are a lot of those conversations that happen amongst the administrators and the teachers, and also amongst the administrative team, looking for ways, again, to promote that change, because there are certain pieces of the rubric that are inherently more difficult, particularly to be exceeding, and some of the student engagement pieces and the student ownership and responsibility of the work. When you get into some of the indicators in section 3, for example, of that rubric, you will see that it can be very difficult to move forward. And this is an issue you'll hear no matter where you are in the state. If, however, all of that said, we come to a point at the end of a year where a teacher is unhappy with the rating that they have received, there is a process. There has to be a process by statute. There is a board that has to review it. It would actually probably at one point go back to the committee. The union is involved, and other people moving forward might be asked to come into a classroom and to independently observe, for example. We, knock on wood, have not had to have this process at this point in Watertown.
Thank you.
I'd just like to tag off of Jim's question. I think it was a good question. Got me thinking a little bit in regards to the fact that our whole mission is to improve practice. And that's built into everything that we talk about. It's built into everything that this committee did in order to provide. When I think back to how long ago we learned about SEED and the trepidations in which even board members had and administrators had and then teachers had, to now see this is delightful in terms of what we thought a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago when we first SEED. But in terms of improving practice, I would be surprised Sort of posing this as a question, would you be surprised if a teacher really didn't know by the time we got to the final ratings that they were in a 2 or a 1 based on what we're constantly doing to improve practice?
Right. Because of how many times you're observed during the year, because of the way the reviews of practice are being conducted, yes, it shouldn't, by the time you get to the end, it shouldn't be a surprise. However, sometimes even along the way, again, there can be fretting about what a score is in a particular area. And that is when the conversation, the meat of the conversation really happens. When someone says, you know, I've taught for 15 years, how can I be a 2 in this category? And we're assessing, as Jim said, to some degree, to a cut and dry rubric. So there are certain pieces of practice that a teacher can engage in, some strategies and some ways of implementing best teaching practices in a classroom that will help to bring a person to that level. And that's what we have to work with people along the way. And that's why it's a plan. It's not only about the observations. It's also, as I mentioned, the plan, part of the rationale is to provide the professional growth that people need. So that has to be an integral part of this, and it's one of the reasons we look at the data, for example, and I think I explained at one point to the board that one of the things that we have done is harvest the data out from the Bloomboard system, with Bloomboard's help, thankfully, because we didn't have someone here to do it with us. We harvested out that data, and we sat as administrators in a room and looked across the entire district to see what the ratings look like and to look for patterns. Is there a particular school where there are more 2s than 3s? Who gave out the most 1s? Who gave out the most 4s? And so just asking those kinds of questions and looking at our own practice too help us not only to get better as administrators, but also it helps us to look at the professional development needs of teachers. Because if we can look across some of these categories and see that across the board, the ratings here are always lower, then we know that that's a place that we need to focus in our professional growth. And also, I should say, teachers. It gives teachers a say in it also. So when you're, again, back to Jim's question, dovetails with this. So if I'm a teacher that in this particular arena keeps approaching expectations, I may need to have a conversation with my administrator about additional training in a particular area. And we as administrators are tasked to assist them in finding that, give them the release time, and so on.
Lambert?
The additional training was the answer I was looking for.
Okay.
Question, on that, the evaluations, are they done on an annual basis? I mean, the finalized?
Yes, the summative rating,
Is done at
yes, they're being done all over the schools as we speak because they are required to be, it's another part of the statute, they must be submitted to the state by June 30th. So we have to submit the ratings for every teacher to the state by June 30th. Yeah, thank you. Janet wants to make sure I say this because people get nervous when they say that. We don't submit teacher names. It's by count. How many teachers had 3s, 4s, 2s, 1s? I mean, that's what we turn in. And they have to sign off on them for that to happen also, to complete the evaluation process. So people need to sign off on the evaluations prior to the ending of school.
A question that was asked when we first learned about SEED, going back to the beginning again, was how to determine how practical the amount of time that administrators had to spend on this would end up being. And at the beginning, it was not considered to be very practical. I feel that now, with this plan, that we are at a place where it can be accomplished, I won't say easily, but accomplished in a decent, within a decent schedule so that administrators aren't taxed by this on a daily basis.
Well, I'm going to give you the honest answer to the question. You know, it's what you've come to expect from me, I think, and the answer is no. The bottom line is we still have to meet the statutory requirements. And when you look at the number of observations and so on that are being done, just that alone, you can see what it entails. And so some of it, we're hoping, streamlines a little bit, in part, for example, because of the way the reviews of practice will be done. That will make it, first of all, more meaningful than the way it had been being done in the mid-year review because it's tied to actual assessments and lesson plans and artifacts that a teacher thinks are relevant for an administrator to see. But it still is what it is. You know, in a school like the high school, you know, I can speak to this most familiarly because I had to be here and do the plan. You're talking about if it's all year one and year two teachers, and if you look across the district at how many people we've hired in the past year, you can see how many year one and year two teachers we'll still have even next year. Having 3 formal observations each, and it has to be one of the administrators. So that's the principals, the assistant principals, the director of student services, or the supervisor of student
Plus the pre and
services.
post.
Plus the pre and post. So when you look at the amount of time that goes into doing this, it's a lot of time for teachers. Again, this review of practice will make it easier for them. That will lessen their time a little bit. Having the one SLO makes it easier, but the time required for every formal observation, if you're in a classroom for at least 30 minutes, because if something is going on that you need to stay and watch to make the observation worthwhile, you're going to stay more than 30 minutes. So you're going to do that 3 times for every year 1 and 2 teacher, and you're going to do it at least, and again, it's at least once for every not tenured teacher, every beyond year 2 teacher. So, and then another question that came up in the subcommittee meeting, for example, someone asked about, well, how many opportunities do people get? What if the one formal you happen to do for a year 8 teacher is really not great? Well, more than likely that administrator is going to be back in there at least one more, if not several more times. So those are the parts that add on even more time to the plan. But this is something that all districts are struggling with. I mean, honestly, having some pieces in place from the infrastructure standpoint that we are looking to put in, for example, having the school social worker who can assist with some of the counseling needs and some of the things, take a little bit of the burden off of the administrators in that regard will be helpful. But I think,
Director of Technology, grabbing the data that they might need.
right, because that's another issue, is trying to, again, we have to keep this data, we have to house this data, we have to put it into the forms to turn it into the state and so on. And at this point, you know, for the most part, we are all the ones doing that throughout the year.
Apologize, but I do have another question in regards to reporting the numbers to the state. What do you anticipate the state doing with those numbers in terms of publication or rating, funding? Do you think that they're going to use those numbers in some fashion?
I think as again, we talked about the district performance index in the subcommittee meeting, which is something that is compiled based upon student attendance, graduation rates, and sometime in the near future, the standardized test scores being a part of that. Your teacher ratings will more than likely play a part at some point in that district performance index.
Board members have any follow-up questions?
I got one.
Mr. Lambert?
One last one, and this one's kind of a crazy question, but I'm going to ask it anyways, like I usually do. It could possibly happen that there becomes an adjustment politically, and this goes into the courts and comes back, and the federal government says, we're getting out of the educational business. State government says, we're getting out of the educational business. We're not going to tell you what to do in your school districts. Do it yourself. Is there anything that you've learned in this system, this evaluation plan, that you could take and use if you wanted to in your own district to teach the way you wanted to teach? Is there something here that you could, all this professional development, can you take anything out of it
Yes. So
and reuse?
yes. So if the craziest thing possible happened and the government said, do whatever you want. The good news of all of this, and this is where, as I think you were alluding to, Mrs. Crotty, you know, for all of the panic that this has caused, the good that comes out of this is that we do all have a common language to speak. So the rubric is based on some validity of what best practice looks like in a classroom. And so as teachers understand that, and as administrators understand that, to some degree, that could be used, and maybe we would want to make some adjustments and so on to it. I'm not saying that, but that and the professional growth that has gone and training that has gone along with that for teachers and administrators and will continue to happen helps us to get better as a district. It helps teachers to do better and helps administrators to do better, so it helps the district to grow. The time commitment and you know the bigger piece of this requirement, and if you look at it, you know, somewhat in the sense of the unfunded mandate, you know, and I hate to throw that around, but if you look at it to some degree from that perspective, you are talking about the amount of time that is put into the bigger bureaucratic piece of it, making sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted to meet the letter of how many evaluations, observations need to be done and so on. That's the piece that can be difficult. And the part that you'll hear most often from both teachers and administrators across the state, including here in Watertown, is sometimes when there is, if there's a teacher, and I'll just use a one person example, but there's always more than one. If there's a teacher in a building that needs a tremendous amount of support, you know, for example, you have a lot of first and second year teachers, you are strapped for time because this is requiring you to do the same thing at all times for everyone. And so the teacher next door, who may not need quite as many observations and support, at least right now, it doesn't matter. You have to be in there doing the same thing for them. And that's where it's difficult to fully implement in a way that would be most beneficial to us. If we had some more discretion over the way it was implemented based upon the need in a building, for example, I think we would be in a better place. And that's mostly what people complain about.
Thank you.
Mr. Lambert said that was the last question he had. Does anybody else have any further questions for Dr. Carnamola? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Will that be all for superintendent's report? Will that be all for superintendent's report?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We wish Mrs. Parlato's well. To our first round of public participation, do any members of the public wish to address the board this evening? Again, do any members of the public wish to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to the report from the board chair. Tonight, I'd like to thank the members of the Board of Education and the community who have been working very hard to raise awareness about the importance of voting in tomorrow's referendum. While many towns around us just passed or even failed their budgets by just a handful of votes, we have been working diligently to raise the percentage of residents in our district who vote. Although it's not the job of the Board of Education to single-handedly increase voter turnout in Watertown and Oakville, it's clearly not our job. But it's a responsibility that we put on ourselves and we take very seriously. Not only because we are officials elected to serve in the best interests of the students and thereby the town, but because we know it's fiscally responsible and we refuse to bring Watertown and Oakville backwards. We refuse to sit back and let the silence determine our fate. We have a team of PTO parents in the front lines, garnering support of many of our residents, their friends, their neighbors. And we have local businesses that are doing the same, offering discounts to the community, talking to their customers. We all refuse to give up. There are those who hope for a referendum failure because they cannot afford increases in their taxes. And to those I say, don't think that cuts are better for your pocketbook, because in the long run, it hurts your bank account. Watertown and Oakville cannot afford to be penny wise and dollar foolish. And I say Watertown and Oakville because there are two vibrant communities within us, and they each deserve to live in a town that cares for the children and the grandchildren and develops its students into employable residents. Employable residents who want to raise their families of their own here in this town. We won't give up. We are referendum ready, and I look forward to thanking the residents at the polls tomorrow for showing up and voting. I'd also like to thank the administrators, the teachers, for welcoming the PTO's ideas within your schools. I believe that the PTOs have created some wonderful contests to help increase voter turnout in the town, including sticker collections, rewarding their classrooms for getting their aunts and uncles and their neighbors to go out and vote. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people who have asked to help. We may not always know of something that they can do, but the fact that they ask, for me, is enough. I'd like to also point out that I'd like to thank Mrs. Rinaldi for taking on something that Guy Bizzano started long before he even was a board member, and doing our referendum reminder phone calls. Coordinating that is quite an effort. I only had to do it for 1 year. So I'm appreciative of Mrs. Rinaldi putting her efforts to make those reminder phone calls. They're extremely important. And, you know, we're talking about 1,800 phone calls that get accomplished within a 24-hour period, and that's quite a feat. So at this time, I would just like to invite the public and those of you who might be watching this on video tonight to get out and vote tomorrow in the referendum. Know that your Board of Education has done everything we can to make sure that we are referendum ready, that we have presented a budget through Dr. Cardamola and the great work of her team that we are comfortable with, that we can stand by, and know that next year, come September, we will be running a district that will educate our children at the level of responsibility that we should be at. Thank you. Turning over to committee reports. Mr. Ray Nardella, anything from curriculum and instruction?
Yes, Madam Chair. As Dr. Cardamola just very articulately presented, we met prior to the regular Board of Education meeting to go over the teacher evaluation system, excuse me, the administrator evaluation system, and we really appreciate Dr. Cardamola and Ms. Parlato's input and them being able to answer questions. And I'd like to also thank everyone involved in the process, especially the committee, because I know it's no easy feat, as we talked about. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nardella. And had I known our meeting would go to this length this evening, I would have told everybody to bring a second bottle of water. Policy and labor, we have nothing to report this evening. I'll turn it over to Mr. Lambert for budget and finance.
The only thing I have, Ms. Crotty, is to ask everyone to please go out and vote in a referendum tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Moving on to facilities, PBC, and operations committee. Back to you, Mr. Lambert.
Yes, the only thing I have is I'd like to thank Ray Senecola and the custodians and the maintenance crews for getting our schools in ship shape for our referendum tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. I echo that sentiment. And back to Mr. Nardella for governance and community engagements.
There's no report tonight, Madam Chair.
And we're right back to you, Mr. Nardella, for any communications to the board.
This time, there are no communications to the board.
Thank you very much. This evening, Dr. Cardamola presented the teacher evaluation plan for Watertown Public Schools, and I'd like at this time to ask for a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve of the 2015-2016 teacher evaluation plan for Watertown Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Mr. Nardella. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you for all of the work on that, Dr. Cardamola, and to your team and the 18 committee members.
Mostly thank you to, I have to say, even though she's not here to hear me say it again, mostly thank you to Ms. Parlato, who, as you know, ensures that every T is crossed and every I is dotted, and that's why I was able to come and do this, even in her absence tonight. Thank you, Janet.
Yes, thank you very much to Mrs. Parlato. Moving on to M, future agenda items and board member comments. Do board members have any future agenda items they wish to recommend or any comments to share at this time? Okay, move on to letter N, public participation. This is our last round of public participation. Do any members of the public wish to address the board this evening? Last call for any members of the public that wish to address the board this evening. Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Nardella. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.